Hello, everyone. I have the pleasure of talking to a well-known filmmaker, Mr. Charles Theriault of Keswick. He's originally from Moncton, but he now resides in Keswick. Charles, welcome to CJFY Radio, sir.
Well, very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Charles, we have a common interest, our woodlands. I explained to you earlier before I hit the record button that I like to fish and hunt, and I know you're a land lover. And you're in the process of developing a film about our woodlands here in the province of New Brunswick, and I did happen to catch some episodes about it. Can you tell me just exactly what you're trying to accomplish?
Okay. I'm a filmmaker, been a filmmaker for 35 years. And when I moved to Kedgwick here 5 years ago, or Kedgwick River, that's when I discovered about the forest and the Crown lands, the public forest, and that there are major problems. So what I'm doing is I'm building a documentary, but I'm building it on the web. So rather than, for instance, do 8 months of shooting and then 4 months of editing and come out with a 1-hour film, as I do my interviews, I put them up on the web. It's called a docu-web, I guess. So people are following my episodes. At the end of all my research, then I'll do a 2-hour movie, and it's on the state of our Crown Forest, or the state of our public forest, I guess. You know, it doesn't make sense that our richest renewable resource, which is our forests, we're not making any money. The owners, the people, the owners, are not making any money. Actually, we're actually paying out money for it to be harvested.
Now listen, Charles, this is interesting. I want you to keep in mind, as you're explaining what's going on, that we just got a mill shut down here in Miramichi for lumber products.
Yes.
And a lot of Miramichiers, although we've all been surrounded by woodlands, we don't understand exactly how this has all come about. I'm going to let you explain.
Okay. Well, let's go back to the story.
Okay.
Basically, 50% of the forest in New Brunswick is covered, is Crown, what we call Crown, but public forest. It belongs to the people. However, in 1982, the government felt that they weren't managing the public forest properly, so they divided it in 10 and handed it over to industry and told industry, now you guys manage it for the benefit of the people. You know, so that's basically taking and asking the foxes to run the hen house. And what's been happening over the years is they've been finding a way to step by step, increment by increment, to get more of the forest, and we are getting less and less for it. So that's what's been happening. Now, in 1982, the minister at the time was Bud Bird. Not long after that gets into law, the Crown Forest Act, Bud Bird leaves government and then becomes one of the directors of Fraser Papers.
Wow.
Now, so they took the whole forest, divided it in 10, and gave it to 10 biggest industries. It was 9 pulp and paper mills and 1 big lumber mill, Juniper Lumber. And they handed the licenses to them. And it was their job to manage the forest and to deal with the subcontractors and sub-licensees and everything else. They were given a set of rules to follow, and basically they haven't been following those rules. Now, the one advantage about in 1982 was that although they had access to the Crown Forest, and it was established that they had an annual allowable cut, they weren't allowed to cut more than so much. They first had to buy their wood from private woodlot owners before having access to the Crown Forest.
Okay.
In 1982. So that sort of made it fair, in a way, because at least the private woodlot owners, and there are tons of them, they own, the private woodlot owners in New Brunswick own 33% of the forest in New Brunswick. Crown is 50%, and what we call industry freehold. The industries, the Irvings and the Acadian Timbers, they own 17%. So the private woodlot owners, that's a lot of wood. So at least that gave them an out where they could sell their wood. Now, the price that was established that industry would pay for Crown Forest was determined by how much industry could negotiate with private woodlot owners. So it was the same thing. So if they negotiated a price with the private woodlot owners, and that's through the marketing boards, That price became the price that industry would pay for private woodlot and would pay for Crown Forest. Now, in 1992, Frank McKenna came and changed that law. So industry no longer had to buy from private woodlot owners. So what happened is right away, the price dropped, like overnight, 40%, boom. Industry now could dictate how much it wanted to pay because they no longer really had to purchase from the private woodlots, okay?
Yes, sir.
So it dropped 40%, so guess what? The price they paid for Crown Forest dropped by 40% as well because it all follows, and it's still like that today. So what's happened is we've been losing money, gradually losing money in that sense of what it's worth. To the point that I think it's in 2008, 2009, the Auditor General in New Brunswick did a study and came and said basically it's unfair. We can't determine if the province is getting fair price or not because the forest is controlled by just a few people. So what's been happening over the years, as you know, pulp and paper mills have been falling all over the world, right? The industry's been crashing. So in New Brunswick, the industry, as a pulp and paper mill would close, it would lose its license. So the government, instead of holding on to that license, perhaps to be able to entice other companies with innovations in other ways of using the forest to come over, or perhaps to allow the communities like Miramichi to be able to develop themselves and use the forest. No, they've been taking that license and bringing it back in within the fold. So a license is available. Oh, here, we'll give it to Irving. Or a license is available. A company's gone down. Well, here, Acadian Timber or Fraser's can have it.
Yes.
So where there used to be 10, really now there are only 5. And the biggest controller of our Crown Forest, of course, is the Irving Company. I think it's in the area of 80%.
Okay.
So that's huge, okay? Now, other places we've been losing money is, you see, in 1982, prices were established because the government used to handle all the contracting out of silviculture work, of plantation trees, and of uproads of roads and bridges, right?
Yes.
But in 1982, that was handed over to industry as well. And a price was set at that time. And you know what? In the last 30 years, that cost has not been checked. All they've been doing is increasing it according to inflation, right?
Okay.
So basically, if they get so many millions of dollars for road upkeep, I think this year they got 10, if not $20 million for road upkeep of bridges and within the Crown Forest, right? Now, it's never been checked. And if they do save money doing it, they get to keep the money. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Government used to do it themselves, and they would have contractors, and they would make sure that everybody, that it was fair price. But it hasn't been checked in the last 30 years. The same thing for silviculture work, and the same thing for management.
Wow.
So if the industry gets to do it cheaper, then they get to keep the money. So that's never been checked. It doesn't make sense. In 2010, now the problem has been is that we're making less and less money with our resource, right? So the province hires this world expert in forestry, in forest economics, Mr. Don Roberts of CIBC Worldwide. And they invite him to New Brunswick, and they say, we want you to do a study. We want you to find other sources of revenue that we can get from our province, from our forests, because we're dying here. It's not. So he goes away and does the study. And he comes back and he says, well, if the Crown Forest was managed for its owners in the same way that Acadian Timber manages its forests, its industrial freehold, for its owners, then if it was managed in the same way, the province of New Brunswick in 2010 should have made $140 million in revenue, right? Just from the stumpage price. He says, but you're not. You're actually in a deficit of $30 million. So that's a spread of $170 million of lost revenue potential. So he says your number one problem is the way your forest is managed. Now, when I found that document, that study, I said, what we need to do is change the management of our forests. We have to take industry out of managing our crown forests. Now, the more I dug, the more I found out that, that style of management, New Brunswick was the first one to adopt it in all the provinces in Canada. And recently, and then other provinces followed suit. But a big province like British Columbia, big forest province like British Columbia, 5 years ago, changed it. They realized, no, it's not working. And they took forestry out of managing, they took the forest industry out of managing its crown forest.
Yes.
Ontario followed suit, and that's a big forest province. And Quebec this year has done the same thing. They have taken industry out of managing the crown forest because they realized that the industry was not managing it for the owners, they were managing it for themselves. Okay, and now we keep losing money. We keep losing the potential to make money. Last year, the Department of Natural Resources a deficit of $17 million. That means that we took money from our taxpayers' pockets and paid the industry to take the wood away. It doesn't make sense when our largest renewable resource is our forest.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense. So where is the money? Why don't we have money for schools? Why don't we have money for healthcare? Why don't we have money for our infrastructure? It's because nobody is standing up to the industry and saying, hey guys, time to pay the piper. You're not doing a good job. I mean, Mr. Irving wouldn't accept this kind of poor management in his own forest.
In his own forest, that's right.
Okay? But we've accepted it. Every government, year after year, have been kicking the can, 4 years down the road.
Why are we doing this to ourselves, Charles? And why is you and I, taxpayers, and everybody else in Keswick and Miramichi not saying something about it? What's wrong?
Well, we're not being informed.
No, that's right.
Right?
Okay.
Where are our investigative journalists?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd say most of them are working for Brunswick News, and they're not that investigative, basically.
Listen, here's what I would like you to do for me and the Miramichi people. Mm-hmm. Tell me about your film, like the episodes. I'm interested mostly with Don McRae, episode 11, but there's many episodes there that you're creating. And tell the people how they can check it out on the website and get involved and educate themselves. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to educate the Miramichi.
Well, that's perfect. I have a website up, and it's called www.isourforestreallyours.com. No question mark. Isourforestreallyours.com.
Okay.
And on that, there's an English and French version, and you choose where you want to go, and then there are 14 episodes. And all the different states. I started by going to see a historian who did his doctoral studies on the forest industry. I start there. And he tells us, basically, since the 1930s, we've had no control. We've handed over control to the industry since the 1930s. So this is just, typical of the industry of taking advantage at every turn. And then I talk to private woodlot owners, and I talk to former politicians, and I talk to professionals who keep saying the same thing. We are in a mess.
Yes, and Charles, I have forester friends that I fish with and hunt with, and they say the same thing that you're stating here now.
Yeah. The problem is nobody's educating the population. Nobody has taken the time, no journalist has taken the time to investigate.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I'm very thankful for you, for starters, and I really appreciate your time. Will you come back and visit us once again and continue to do your good work? Oh, no problem. I'll even do better than that. In the last 10 months, I've given 10 conferences. If you invite me over to your community, I'll be more than happy. If somebody wants to pay for gas, more than happy to show the videos, because many people are not computer savvy, right? That's right. Many people are having a hard time. Great, I gave them a website, but they're not quite sure how to navigate. So I've prepared presentations. I go into communities, and it's an hour presentation going through everything I've found out so far.
And that's very effective, especially for those who don't have access to computers.
Charles, I'm going to tell you something. I've been considered the voice of the Miramichi for 35 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Good.
I've been doing play-by-play for that long, and in hockey. And you know what? You are now a friend of the Miramichi, and we are going to get you over here somewhere, and I'm going to get somebody to set this up. I can give you my word on that.
My pleasure to come down.
Charles, thank you for the information. You've been very helpful, and let's hope that we're educating the Miramichi and just small reasons why Miramichi lumber products may be shut down.
Well, I got to tell you something. If we want to change this, it's going to take a groundswell of people, and one person at a time.
Okay.
But it's working because I've been around the province, and that voice is getting heard.
Okay.
Slow but sure. It'll take time, but we will do this. We will get back control. It does not make sense that the town of Miramichi, who was once considered the capital of forestry in Canada,
That's right.
does not have access to the wood that surrounds it.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay.
All right, we'll be in touch, Charles. Thank you, sir.
You take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.